"You have 6 to 8 weeks to live." Those were the fatal words pronounced to Maureen Bell by her doctor in 2006. However, do not despair. She survived that prognosis and is coming to visit me next week. I'm sure none of you would ever choose to hear such words, but if there was a way to turn that around, you would want to know about that, right? Great. Then I will share 3 of the main lessons Maureen learned through her healing journey. She was into natural healing, green design. She loved plants and animals. She also had already brushed shoulders twice with cancer. She was a type A personality, which meant she kept pushing, but ended up in a wheelchair. In 2006, she was living on Whidbey Island working on a building project. This time, she pushed so hard, she ended up collapsing. Luckily, her friend was there to rush her to the hospital. That was when she got the diagnosis of stage 4 non-hodgkins lymphoma. The doctor said they could do some chemo to prolong her life, but otherwise, there was nothing they could do for her. 2 months later, before that last round of chemo was scheduled, as predicted, she was expected to die shortly. She held in there until her son could visit so they could say goodbye. As her son was leaving, he remembered the strong single mom who raised him, and he knew she knew about natural healing. So he asked, "Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you fight?" He left with the question ringing in her head, "Do I have a choice? Do I have a choice?" Literally, in that moment, she got surrounded by this beautiful light and felt the feeling some may call unconditional divine love. And if there was such a thing as astral beings, it sounded like one was speaking this word into her ear: choice. Choice. She woke up from that experience for the first time in a long time, not feeling any pain in her body and feeling hungry. She called her sister into the room who had been taking care of her to tell her about the experience she just had. They were crying because she knew she was going to be healed. The second thing that was happening during that time was she was having dreams that looked like her body splitting into 2 and going down 2 different paths. Yet that night, she saw one body going down one path. What she gathered from that is one was the body and one was the soul, and they needed to learn to talk together and communicate better, to work in harmony and cooperatively, so they could be a fully happy person. In that way, they would seem like soulmates and be complete. Maybe some of you have had moments in your life where you felt complete. And that moment, she felt fully complete. The third lesson she learned was during that last round of chemo. She actually thought she didn't need to have the chemo. She was going to heal on her own. But something intuitively said, go through that last round of chemo. She also all of a sudden had this curiosity what the chemo drug was made of. Her body was still weak even though she wasn't feeling pain, so they had to prop her up on some pillows so she could look at her laptop and do the research. When she was looking up the first drug of the collection of drugs she had been given, she saw that it was made from one of her favorite plants. She planted it everywhere as an adult. And then she looked up what the other chemo drugs were made from and looked up information about each of those plants. She went into that last round of chemo with appreciation for the drug. Now, normally chemo is very toxic and it doesn't discriminate between the good and the bad. She dialogued with it as if it was her best friend. Normally, it would take 10 hours for all of the drugs to get absorbed into her body. This time, it only took 3. Normally, her urine would turn blood red. This time, it stayed its normal color. Her hair was growing back in, she was gaining weight, and the nurses were wondering if she was being given a placebo drug. Needless to say, she continued on that healing journey. It did take 2 years of treatments, but today she is a fully healthy, beautiful, wise woman writing and speaking about those experiences. Next week, when she comes to visit, we will be walking on the beach, no problem. It's amazing how much choice we have when we shift our thoughts, our attitudes, and our awareness. Fatal pronouncements do not have to be your fate.